guys, it's nearly my bedtime. It's Rebecca, and I'm just going to read a story to you. So all you have to do is sit here. I've decided that we read Rumpelstiltskin. I can't say it. 20. Okay, get ready. Once a poor miller had a clever, beautiful daughter. One day he boasted to the king that his daughter could spin straw into gold. Of course this wasn't true, but the king believed him. So he locked the miller's daughter in a room full of straw and said that if she did not spin it all into gold by next morning, he would chop off her head. The girl was sitting there weeping, not even trying to spin, when a voice said, "What will you give me if I do your job?" A strange little man was in the room. "My necklace," said the girl, and the little man spun the straw into gold. Next day the king locked the girl into an even bigger room. Again the little man appeared. This time the girl gave him a ring in return for his work. The third day the king promised to marry the girl if she did the trick one last time. He locked her into a room as big as a barn. When the little man appeared, the girl had nothing to give. "In that case," he said, "when you are queen, your firstborn will be mine." Secretly the girl thought, never. All the same, she let this little man do his magic spinning. The king was as good as his word, and they were married. In a year's time the new queen had her first baby. How horrified she was when the little man appeared. She offered him gold, but no, he would only have the baby. The queen wept so hard that he took pity on her. He said that if she could guess his name in 3 nights, she could keep her baby. The first night she went all through the alphabet. Aaron, Bartholomew, Christian, none of her guesses were right. The second night she tried funny-sounding names. Article, Danny Slovel, Gumdroopy, but again she was wrong each time. Then the queen overheard a servant laughing about a strange little man he'd seen in the forest, dancing and chanting to himself. "My name's not Elgin, Merlin, Finn or Larkin. My secret name is Rumpelstiltskin." When the little man realised that the queen knew what he was called, he flew into such a rage that smoke came out of his ears, and he stamped his foot on the floorboards. In his effort to pull himself out, he split into 2, and that was the end of him. That's it. Just 2 pages. Let's see what to read next. One more story, that will be good. Sorry if you can't see the pictures. I'm gonna do Puss in Boots. Oh no, Sleeping Beauty. Once a king and queen gave an enormous party to celebrate the birth of their daughter. After the feast, the king told everyone how happy he was to be a father, for he and his wife had been waiting for years to have a child. Next, he made everyone laugh with his story about learning to change nappies. Then it was time for the guests to give the baby princess their presents. The last to come forward with their gifts were 12 fairies. "My gift to the princess is happiness," the first fairy announced. The guests clapped and the king beamed all over his face. "Mine is beauty," said the second. "Mine wisdom," said the third. And so they went on. The 12th fairy was about to give her gift when a clap of thunder shook the palace. The doors burst open and the guests cowered as an old woman shuffled in. "The 13th fairy!" people gasped in horror. The fairy's terrible voice hissed from the doorway. "Where's my invitation, king?" "Someone must have forgotten to deliver it," the king mumbled. "Servants, set another place, quick." Actually, he hadn't invited her because he only had 12 golden plates for the fairies to eat from, so he decided to leave one out. The fairy stood over the little princess's cradle. The baby gurgled and reached up a tiny hand. Suddenly the fairy cackled. My gift is that on the princess's 15th birthday she will prick her finger on a spindle and die. With another clap of thunder, the wicked fairy flew away. The palace doors banged shut. There was a terrible silence. Then the queen began to cry. The 12th fairy stepped forward. I have not given my present yet, she said softly. I can't undo the evil spell, but I can change it. My gift will be that instead of dying, the princess will sleep for 100 years. Years passed and all went well. The baby grew into a healthy young girl, pretty and happy and clever. The king and queen no longer thought about the evil spell. All the spindles in the land had long been destroyed. Surely the princess was safe. But on the very day of her 15th birthday, the princess found a door she'd never noticed before. Behind it, a staircase climbed into a tower. Up the princess went until she reached a door with a golden key. The princess entered a tiny room. An old lady sat at a wheel. What are you doing? The princess asked. The old lady smiled. I'm spinning. Don't stand there staring, child. Try it yourself. She pushed the spindle towards the princess. At that moment, a terrible thing happened. The sharp spindle pricked the princess's finger and she sank to the floor. Down in the busy courtyard, the hen stopped cackling. The princess's dog stopped chasing the cook's cat. In his study, the king was writing his daughter's birthday card, but the pen fell from his fingers. Even the kitchen fire stopped burning. The whole palace went to sleep. Years slowly passed. The palace was forgotten, but 100 years later a handsome young prince happened to ride by. He noticed a thorny hedge growing high in the distance. His servants laughed and told him an old story of an enchanted palace and a sleeping beauty. But what if it's true? The prince thought and rode towards the hedge. At first he could see no way through. The hedge was far too thick and thorny for climbing. Then he drew his sword and began to hack his way in. The prince couldn't believe what he found on the far side. All round him, animals and people stood and lay as still as statues. He walked through the palace. Not even a fly buzzed on the sunlit windows. No one moved. No one answered his questions. Then he came to a half-open door at the base of a tower. Inside was a staircase. The prince thought he saw something gold glinting at the top. He bounding up the steps, and a moment later was beside the princess. Sleeping Beauty, he murmured to himself, leaning over her. He couldn't resist. He bent down and kissed her on the lips. At once the princess's eyes opened her eyes. As she did so, the fire roared back into life down in the kitchen. In his study, the king picked up the pen he dropped and finished writing his daughter's birthday card. The hens pecked for grain in the dust. And in the room at the top of the tower, the princess saw the prince's face above her. For the first time in 100 years, she smiled. Will you marry me? The prince whispered. Yes, the princess said, and she kissed him back. When the king heard the good news, he ordered an enormous feast. The prince and princess were married and they lived happily ever after. That's it for tonight. So, just remember bedtime stories are good. They're not babyish, they're just good. I have loads. Okay, I'm going to do Riri's recipe on Sunday now. Sunday, I promise, look. I promise, I'm not crossing my fingers. Sorry I couldn't do it on Saturday. Doing it on Sunday, that's better. Okay. Peace out.